Hola amigos! In today's episode we are going to be talking about is it love or is it infatuation? But first, we of course have a story. Once upon a time there was two 32-year-olds. And these two 32-year-olds were at a party once, and they were both lonely on each side of the dessert table, and they didn't even notice each other. And in their hunger, in their desire to fill their mouths with pleasure while experiencing this unpleasurable party, they both reached their hands to the side without looking the other way, and they grabbed in the bowl of desserts the pretzel M&Ms, and their hands touched. In order to grab their pretzel M&Ms, the man's hand touched the woman's hand, and they met within this huge bowl of pretzel M&Ms. And what did they call this moment? They called this moment destiny. Yes, from this very moment, they talked about one thing. They said, "Do you love M&Ms? No, not just M&Ms. Do you love pretzel M&Ms?" That's what the man asked, and the woman said, "Yes, I love pretzel M&Ms. Do you yourself love pretzel M&Ms?" And the man said, "Yes, of course. It's one of the 82 million things that I live for." And after that moment, the man, the woman, they practically were just inseparable. And all they talked about was pretzel M&Ms. They had talked about how much they loved pretzel M&Ms. They had talked about how little they loved all of the other M&Ms. They talked about the salt on the pretzels and the chocolate combined with the outer shell of M&Ms. And they talked about how they wish the whole ocean was empty of water and full of pretzel M&Ms. And they wish that they could eat to each other from different continents and dive in and eat chomp, 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 chomp and meet each other in the middle, like some weird Lady in the Tramp dream with pretzel M&Ms. This is all they talked about until their wedding 3 weeks later. Yes, they dated for 3 weeks and talked only about pretzel M&Ms the whole time. And then they got married in literally a bin, both sitting in 2 bins of pretzel M&Ms. And then half of the seats, which were not filled with any of their friends because none of the friends wanted to support this relationship, were filled with gallon bags of pretzel M&Ms with smiley faces on the outside of these bags. This was the basis of their marriage. Pretzel M&Ms was the basis of their love, or should I say love? Because who were these two really in love with? Were they in love with each other, or were they in love with pretzel M&Ms? Now this might sound like the most idiotic thing that you've ever heard in your life. However, what I will say is that I feel like this happens all of the time. So many people become infatuated with someone else because of 1 or 2 or 3 cutesy little things that they have in common with that other person. Potentially they think that person is cute and that person thinks they are cute, and then boom, let's date, let's get married, let's do all of the things that other people do because this must be love. Or is it? So in this video, we are going to be talking about if your love, or if the love that you will experience in the future, is it actually love or is it infatuation? And without further ado, let's roll the intro of this episode of Stories with Grady. Hola, I'm a 22-year-old man here to discuss your relational game plan, and my name is Grady Wyzorek. And in today's episode, we're on the end stretch of these Love Stories with Grady videos, and all of them are going to have to do with the frontier of love that has to do with love in regards to a relationship, dating someone, and potentially marrying that person. So we are in it for the finish line, ladies and gentlemen. So here's my first question. How can you tell if your love is actually love? How can you test it? In the next video, we are going to actually talk about 6 tests of love, so we'll get there. But first, I have to say a few things in this video about infatuation. So many feelings look like love and aren't, and so many feelings that may not look like love are love. It's interesting because in many different countries, they marry for position, or they marry for money, or they marry for status, or they marry for fame. I'm looking at you, Hollywood. But in our country, for the most part, we marry for love. But here's the thing, how can you marry for love if you don't even know what love is? Kind of a problem. So here's the deal. A lot of us have been raised, if you're in America, just like I'm in the United States of America, if you've been raised in America, you have likely heard of the Great American Fairy Tale. What is the Great American Fairy Tale, you may ask? Well, I'm going to read it out for you right now. But this might hit a relevant spot where you're saying, yeah, that is kind of what I expect. And if this is what you expect from a relationship, we might have some chatting to do. So I'm gonna read this off. The Great American Fairy Tale. All our lives, we have heard the fairy tale of love. It has been our bedtime story through the years. The advertisements for soap and cosmetics, television and radio, the movies, and the books and magazines we read. It is so much a part of our folklore that we sometimes do not realize all its elements and how they affect us. The story goes something like this. Step 1. Nothing much had ever happened to her. She had been living a life of innocent waiting, doing her schoolwork, being nice to her mother, helping with the dishes, and washing her hair on Saturday night. She was sweet and winsome and entirely undiscovered until Step 2. Suddenly, he appeared. He knew at once that she was for him. He saw her across the room and said to himself, "Holy moly, I'm going to marry that girl." He was all that she had dreamed of. Tall, dark, handsome, and with a shy grin that lit up his face. And so, Step 3, they fell in love. Utterly, completely, suddenly in love. 1 minute she was alone in the world, an unclaimed treasure. The next, she was madly in love. Before he had entered that room, he was adrift. No one to tie to, no good woman to keep him from going to the dogs. The next, there she was, so naturally. Step 4. They met and kissed and knew they were made for each other. What they did those first few minutes, those first few days, and first few weeks did not matter except that they were together. Even if there had been any question about their love before, when at last he kissed her, all doubts flew away, and she sighed, "Oh, darling," with all her heart. Then, of course, there was no alternative but that. Step 5. They marry as soon as they can. For this is the real thing. Love is all that matters. Out of all the world, there is one man for one woman. And when they are brought together by the hand of fate, they must obey and marry before it is too late. The ending of the story is always the same. Step 6. And they lived happily ever after. Their marriage was built on real love, so of course they will live happily ever after. If they run into trouble, then it could not have been real love after all. The real love ends only in permanent bliss, a lifetime of sweethearts together, with never a cross word, never a dull moment, only the never-ending thrill of belonging to each other. This is the story that has been told to us through the years in many forms, with countless variations and in many settings. But in all its tellings, it remains essentially the same. We love it because it's so familiar, and of course, it is a sweet story, the sweetest story ever told. But unfortunately, it is not entirely true. It is a fairy tale, a lovely, frothy, delightful fairy tale that comes true in real life, about as often as the prince finds his Cinderella, or the pumpkin turns into a coach and four. We like fairy tales. We wouldn't want to lose them for the world. Yet when we grow up enough to begin to know what love really is like, it is time for us to know what to expect. Now we must learn the difference between the fiction and facts of love. From Facts of Life and Love for teenagers, Evelyn Millis Duvall is dropping the mic. She's finally coming full circle to this one phrase, Facts of Life and Love for teenagers. We finally have arrived, folks. Listen, a story like that is possible, but it happens once in the blue moon. And actually, the thing is, I would say some of that actually isn't that unrealistic. However, step 6, and they live happily ever after. That's almost like the key part of this that I really tuned in on. It's like, and they live happily ever after. There's no problems, and if there is a problem, that person wasn't the one, and so they're not going to actually be able to experience love with that person because they weren't the one. But here's the deal, there's going to be problems in any relationship. There's going to be people who are failing. There's going to be the guy who fails sometimes, there's going to be the girl who fails at times, and guess how you get through that failure? It's not by saying, hey, it looks like we're not having the fairy tale love life, let's walk away and never talk to each other again. No, it's saying, but let's communicate through this. We need to communicate through this because this love that we experience is worth it. This is how we start seeing, is what we have love, or is it infatuation? So what's the difference between fiction and facts of love? Evelyn Millis Duvall starts chatting all about it. While storytellers have been talking about love through the ages, social scientists have also been looking at fantastic love situations that have worked, and they've looked at love situations that quite haven't worked so well. And here's what the social scientists have learned about love. Love is not a moonlight moment. It is a learning process. We do not fall in love. We learn to continually love throughout our life. Love is a learning process. It's not an instant picnic under the stars. And we have to realize this, the book says this, by the time that boy meets girl, a great deal has happened for both of them to make them ready for their interest in each other. They've both been preparing for this exact moment. It's not just an instant, it's this growth continually through life. And when they find each other, now they're able to grow together. Each has grown up through the phases of emotional maturity, let's hope, to the place where they're both capable of loving and being loved. Evelyn Millis Duvall said it once, and I'll say it again, we grow into love. So then the question asked in the book is, but what about love at first sight? Does that not exist? Here's what Evelyn Millis Duvall has to say. She says, it is a moving experience, but it is not love. In fact, it is infatuation. She says it's more in the nature of infatuation. And I see where she's coming from. What I think about love at first sight is it's really attraction at first sight. And it's really exciting when a story of attraction at first sight leads to love. But in the instant of seeing each other, it's not like suddenly you have this huge, strong emotional bond of spirits and souls in understanding of each other. You don't have that yet. So attraction at first sight might lead to love throughout life, but it's not necessarily love at first sight. Because just like attraction at first sight can lead to love, it can most of times not lead to love at all. Here's the deal. Here's what the book talks about. Infatuation is fleeting. Infatuation is a fine starting point, but it can't be the foundation. The emotional excitement of infatuation is almost as fleeting as a thunderstorm or a lightning strike or a passing tornado. Infatuation is sudden, impulsive, and fragile. Love, however, is a mixture of things. Love is a language that speaks in many different ways. Love also experiences frustration, confusion, resentment, and bitterness. All of these things that are real but aren't ideal. And love amplifies things. If a stranger walks up to me and slaps me right in the face, I likely won't care that much. It will sting for a little bit, and it will be a good story to tell later, but it won't emotionally hurt me. However, if someone I love comes up to me and slaps me right in the face, then that might hurt a little bit. That might sting my soul for years to come, being physically hit by someone who loves me so much and that I love so much. Not to say that abuse is love. Actually, if that was a common recurring pattern of being hit, that would definitely not be good. But that was the first example that popped in my mind. Let's say someone stabbed you in the back, for example. If a stranger stabs you in the back, that's not as hurtful as someone you love stabbing you in the back. The closer you are to someone, the more vulnerably connected you are to that person. Listen, feelings of affection is not all that matters when it comes to love. Since the feelings of affection are always mixed up and unpredictable, we can't always rely on them in permanent relationships. You can't get married based off of only feelings, and we'll talk more about marriage later in later episodes. Feelings of affection are important, but they definitely aren't the only indicator about a person. We can have affection towards a lot of people, but that doesn't mean they're a good partner to potentially marry. There's only a select few people on the planet who would probably be a good partner to marry. And also we have to realize that love is not this like one little small thing that happens in a bottle towards only one person once in your lifetime. Love is something that continually happens on some scale, on some level, on some extent with people all throughout your life. So just because you've loved and lost, doesn't mean you can't love again. It's not like you've lost your chance at loving. Listen, why are divorce rates so high? Well, a lot of the big problems is that couples expect the American pipe dream fairy tale instead of expecting that other person to be a human being. They're not prepared of the mutual devotion and responsibility of having a marriage and what that looks like. It's all right to expect a lot of love, but realize when some of your expectations are bad or are flat out false. And listen, just because you have affection towards someone, just because you genuinely do love someone, it doesn't mean you have to marry them. It doesn't mean that that person's the one to marry. Feelings of affection don't have to lead towards anything rash and sudden. There are different levels of love, and it's important to understand, all right, do I really genuinely value being with this person and committing to them for life, or are they simply just a better friend? And you need to ask yourself the question, why do I love that person? Why does that person love me? Understanding your love doesn't have to take away the excitement of it. It can actually deepen your understanding of what the love is truly founded on and based in, and that increases excitement. The book says ignorance is not bliss. In fact, insight leads to satisfaction. The book says abiding love rests on both head and heart. Your head and heart should be aligned when it comes to love. It should both make sense, and you should be both connected. When two people can both think together as well as feel together, they are going to be much more connected and strongly bonded than a relationship where just people have feelings alone, where they just have infatuation alone, where they don't have any like-mindedness at all. A couple who loves pretzel M&Ms, yes, they might be like-minded, but that's not really something that matters. That shouldn't be the foundation for a marriage. Anyway, my final thoughts on this, my personal thoughts. Love is selfless. Love is saying, I will choose to put this other person before me. I will choose to sacrifice for this person. And it's literally saying, I've heard someone say this, a mentor in my life, I will give myself for you. I will give myself for you. That's what saying I love you means. I will give myself for you. Are you willing to look at that person that you say you love and saying, I will give myself for you, whatever that entails, whatever that means, in a way that's like actually healthy and makes sense? If you aren't at that level, maybe you don't necessarily love them. Maybe you're more infatuated with them or trying to get something out of them. I love you does not mean I get something out of you, and so I'm going to get more. Some people say it that way, but which one are you saying? When you look at that person, do you say I love you in order to give or in order to get? Love is a choice. It's a consistent choice to put that other person before yourself, to help them thrive just like you want to thrive yourself. Love is not proud. Love does not boast. Love, after all, matters the most. Love does not run. Love does not hide. Love does not keep locked inside. Love will sustain. Love will provide. Love will not cease at the end of time. Love will protect. Love always hopes. And love still believes when you don't. I didn't come up with that, but it came from a song that I listened to all the time when I was younger. Right around 13, 14, 15, I listened to that song all the time, but it really embodies what love is. Love protects, love hopes, love believes. Love is built on virtues and values, not necessarily just a feeling of affection. And if you're not ready to protect, to believe, to hope, to not run, to not hide, to not keep locked inside, to not kill your pride, and to not kill your boastfulness, then maybe at this point in your life, you're not ready for a love relationship. And that might be hard to hear. If you're just in this for you, then maybe all you have is infatuation. And that can change. You can choose to love someone. You can choose to grow closer to them. You can choose to want the best for them. That's what makes love so powerful and not fleeting, is when it's a choice and it's something that we all push for. And that choice can change your life, because not only do you give to that other person, but they give to you. And it's an interdependent, love-filled relationship of trust, hope, and yes, affection. All right, everyone, this video has gone way long. I do not look forward to editing this one, but I have way too much notes. This is an important topic. So if you did appreciate this video, if you want to reward me for editing this long video, you can hit the like button right down below. You can comment if you agree with me and why, or if you disagree with me about love and infatuation and why. And then above all else, subscribe in order to stay tuned for next week's video or tomorrow's video, or whenever the schedule comes out. The next video, whenever I publish it, is called The 6 Tests of Love. Is your love actually love? Let's test it. All right, friends and my enemies, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will catch you on the next one. Adios. Dude, what the